Welcome, imaginary friends, to a meeting which includes some real friends, where we are designing Microsolidarity Summer Camp starting next month, August the 20th. And the three of us, Ondrej, Jocelyn, and Rich, are in charge of the process design. So what's the sequence, the choreography, the facilitation, the social design that's going to make this an exceptional event? What makes it different from other events? Why is it going to be amazing? These are some of the topics we're going to discuss. Um, I think to kick us off, I wanted to just get in touch with a little bit of inspiration. Something that's been turning over a lot in my mind lately is there's a quote that I love from Ilya Prigogine, who's people think of him as the grandfather of complexity science, which is something like, the translation is something like, when a complex system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence can transform the whole system to a higher order. And that's kind of the Microsolidarity mission. Like, I think we are in a complex system getting further and further from equilibrium. Like, it feels like the world is getting more and more chaotic and divergent in lots of ways. And that includes some really positive futures and some really negative futures and some positive and negative presence as well. And a lot of incoherence. It feels like there's incoherence everywhere. And I think the reason I'm excited about Microsolidarity Network is we have these people who are skilled in building islands of coherence. Like, we actually know how do you get a group of people together in a way that they feel good to be in each other's company. They feel supported without being stifled. Like, there's a balance of structure and freedom. There's a balance of like autonomy and groupiness, like that we have developed like quite a lot of science on the physics of belonging and the physics of like joyful productivity or meaningful fun, that we've worked out quite a lot about how to make really excellent groups. And all of our experiences so far in Microsolidarity gatherings have been pretty excellent. And we're really in this mission now of like, how do we enroll more people to learn how to be excellent in groups, how to become the kind of people that can initiate very wholesome, positive, fun social contexts. Like, how do you become a social context architect? So that's the stuff that's on my mind, and I sometimes fear that the things that excite me are a little bit too abstract and philosophical to actually connect with people and for them to realize like why they should come or why they should be excited. So I'm hoping other of you can help like bring me down a notch to concrete reality.
Great. I love that start. It got my mind rolling on a number of things I've been thinking about recently as well. Like, especially this like supported versus stifled. We just made the Microsolidarity card deck. 3 of us were there out of a group of 16. And there's one card that really stood out to me, which was like, we welcome each other as we are. On the other side, it says we push each other to grow. There's something like that I find special about the approach that we take to these camps, which is that we're focusing, or in Microsolidarity also generally, it's about what's a good developmental context, what's the context within which each of us grow, and yet there's also that coherence that Ilya Prigogine talked about, like creating islands of coherence without dogma. I think that's quite felt in many of these summer camps, and I'm wondering if this year we can make it more of a research, or like something that we're all kind of aware of a bit more, and find the little moves that do that, or role model it to each other. So I've been thinking a lot about this developmental approach or concept we're talking about, of like, you have a peer who's alongside you, kind of understands the challenges, really embodiedly understands the challenges you're going through while you're maybe learning how to be more excellent in groups, or how to create an excellent group, or and then there's like mentors, people who are role modeling how they've done it and can support you to do it in your way, but sort of highlight the patterns that you might want to be aware of. I think a lot of this stuff that we're doing is about using patterns. How can we make those patterns obvious to each other? Like patterns of how you welcome people, patterns of off-ramping and saying goodbye at the end. There's like recipes for things that kind of are likely to create a more or less excellent experience for people, a more or less memorable connecting time. And then there's apprentices, which are people who maybe would like to fill your shoes one day. And that's something that I'm particularly very excited about myself as a host, because having done this a few times, I actually like to make it even more clear. We've even called some of the roles in the hosting team apprentice roles, like Ondrej is an apprentice host, also Guy and Jesse. And even though they have a lot of hosting experience already, it's just making that clear, like, yeah, we're doing the apprentice peer mentor role thing. And hopefully that means that next year, maybe Ondrej, Jesse, or Guy would want to step into, like, be peers together and could maybe lead the next summer camp if there's one going to happen. You know, it's like, and so how can I be a good mentor to an apprentice is a great question for me. And I'm curious about bringing that, like expanding this concept. I think it's been very much the hosting team who gets this developmental experience in past camps. So how can we offer that experience more to everyone? And yeah, I want to crack the code of that one, that it's not just the hosting team who feels like they leveled up, but everyone gets a sense of, oh, I learned how to be a good mentor or peer or apprentice. Had experiences in at least one of them that was very meaningful. Yeah. It's kind of where my mind's been going the last few days. How about you, Ondrej? Have you got any opening sort of thoughts or things that are pinging off for you?
As I was listening to both of you, what's been coming up, like when Rich, you were talking about all these big ideas and abstract concepts and how you're excited about them, and I'm excited about them as well. And then when I bring it to the reality and my lived experience of previous Microsolidarity gatherings and other things, it's like there's almost this like deceptive simplicity where things are just happening, but I know that there's a lot behind it. A lot of work goes into that, a lot of understanding of humans and human groups and human dynamics and complexity and systems goes into that. And to me, one very important aspect of it all is that you can actually engineer a space and a process which feels incredibly simple and incredibly inviting, where real magic can happen, real like community co-creation, we are greater than the sum of the parts kind of magic can happen. And this has been my experience with Microsolidarity. And I also like the idea of this year's focus being on hosting. And I'd like to ask you a question of why the focus on hosting?
Yeah, why hosting? Good question. I want to hear your take, Jocelyn. I think for me, one way to frame it is like, I don't know the best way to explain this, but it does seem like we're living in a period of decreasing social fabric, like increasing alienation, increasing individualism, increasing polarization, like distances opening up between people. And I've had really positive experiences of like being in villages or in close-knit communities where you suddenly feel like, oh, this is what it's like to be a tribe, or like what it's like to be a herd animal, like where there's a lot of surplus attention and resources and care, and yeah, whenever you need something, someone is there. You were kind of hinting at it, the greater than the sum of the parts thing, Ondrej. That it seems like there's a rare experience of actually having social satisfaction. Like there's enough, there's enough connection, there's enough collaboration, there's enough elegance somehow in the way that we're relating to each other. And that when you get it, it's so good. You know, like people will have gone to I don't know, like one of the Burning Man regional festivals, or some kind of conference or some kind of camp and like, holy moly, I found my people, and like how awesome that feels. Not just I found my person, you know, like one or two people, but actually dozens or hundreds of people that feel like we have common cause and we have shared identity. Like it's such an essential upgrade or like level up. And so the focus on hosting is like, well, who takes responsibility for creating those circumstances? Like who designs the constraints? Who like is this just kind of weather? Like it's like the climate and you just kind of are subject to it. And some groups feel good and some groups feel bad, or like some people are lonely and some people are popular. Is that just kind of the state of the world, or can we get our hands dirty and be engaged and modify the social landscape? So I really come from the hypothesis that we can regenerate the social landscape in the same way that you could regenerate a desert, you know, and restore it back to forest. And the regenerators in this case are the hosts. They're people that are extending a field of trust and belonging and care and inviting people to show up as themselves and become connected. And the host, I think, is the very essential, somewhat magical spiritual role of like inflating a temporary container, like this sort of like invisible bubble that says like inside of this extraordinary bubble things are different and you're going to be treated differently than you're used to getting treated. And it's temporary. It's like you get to have a turn and you make it a certain way and it's like, oh, this one might be more party flavored and that one might be more work flavored and this one might be more psychological or spiritual. Like there's different things that you can create, and then eventually your hosting role closes, the event closes, the group closes, the bubble closes, and then it's someone else's turn, and we're like, learning how to be artful and skillful in creating these social contexts. I just see that like the world that I want to live in has much more connectivity, and the way to get that connectivity is through hospitality, and the people who are taking responsibility for the hospitality are the hosts. What's your version, Jocelyn, now?
I like so much everything you said, especially landing on that like hospitality as leadership aspect, which you're always going on about. And that, development happens within a context, everything grows within something else. So who's the person who's creating that context? My version is, maybe it's just in different words, but creating, I think the more complex the challenges are in our world, and the more volatile things are and changeable, I think the more important it is to create spaces, as opposed to necessarily trying to find the exact right answer, like spaces where people feel they can have the conversations that matter. They find the people that are going to make a difference to their lives. Because when you find the right people, you mentioned something about it, like finding common cause and shared identity, like that's given me so much courage and hope to feel like, oh, I have influence to create a better world or do something. And I think there is a bit of an edge there, like, okay, how do you create common cause and shared identity without othering other groups and becoming polarized, saying like, oh wait, like we're doing the right thing and they're wrong. I've seen that a lot, and I think that's an important difference that we're trying to actually focus on, like creating shared identity and common cause, not as a way to not by creating an enemy image, or like how do you not like there's a how do you not do that, and how do you go into more like, we're occupying this niche of an ecosystem, we feel called to care for this thing like parenting well, or we feel called to do ecosystem restoration, or we feel called to look at mental health, we feel called to create a little bubble for people in this identity that feels marginalized, without saying everyone else is horrible and sucks and should fuck off, you know, like while being like, let us care for this thing and show you how we can live that well in the world. And other people will be occupying other niches. So there's something about that, about being able to host in a way that is identifying what your niche is and what you're excited about and what you feel your gift is, And that takes other people also to see that in you and help you recognize it sometimes, for many people I know. And then have the courage to create that and like build a good field, as you said. Like hosting is also about creating a little boundary, saying this is us. If you don't quite fit in here, why don't you create you? And then we can see what we can learn from each other. Yeah, I think being able to learn how to create your own space, but also embrace diversity and differences of other groups is also an important part of hosting responsibly in our world today. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the different levels. So like I started off by talking about changing the world, kind of this mega scale, sort of infinitely large historical context. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, hospitality, hosting, that's usually operating at a smaller scale, this sort of like this medium level of, maybe, a lot of people right now are talking about how they want to live near their friends and be in a neighborhood. And it's like, well, how are you going to achieve that? You're going to do a lot of hospitality. That's how. There's going to be weekly dinners. There's going to be peer learning exchanges. There's going to be all kinds of activity that are going to involve a lot of hospitality. I know a lot of people that want to be running camps, or they want to run workshops, or they're engaged in this kind of social field of doing stuff for others. So a lot of the people in the Microsolidarity network are operating at that scale of 5 to 500 people. Like, how do I help these groups form coherence and get stuff done together? But as I imagine those people, like, there's also another group of people I think that come who would look at those people and think, well, that's kind of intimidating. I'm not ready to start a neighborhood. And actually what they need is to come out of isolation. They're like usually what we find, I think, there's a lot of them on Twitter, there's a lot of them in the network in general, who are like super intelligent, very caring, very earnest, very open-hearted, and isolated. Like just like a plant that is in too small of a pot, like just kind of constrained. And they're not ready to do some huge, enormous project. They just need to find a handful of really cool collaborators that match them in their values and their intelligence and what they care about. And then they suddenly become capable of much more. And so like, I'm just saying that because those people are also welcome. Like, it's not like you have to qualify to be some incredibly impressive community leader before you can join the network. You can kind of start wherever you're at, and you can expect to find caring, interested people that are gonna give you some pointers on your journey and make introductions and kind of help you along the path. And a lot of us, that's just the stage we're in, is like having to get that first ring in place. That first ring of support needs to be there before you can go off, like you said, Jocelyn, about having the courage and the hope. Like, yeah, you need to actually have those first crewmates in place before you can expect that to really become resilient and to become energized like that.
Yeah. Something's really like popping into my mind here about trying to bring it back to summer camp. Like when you say that, I'm like, okay, who is summer camp for then? Because there are people who are, and I think this really stood out to me in your chat with Andrew Rose, the first one you did about take responsibility. In the first 10 minutes, he talks about Fractal, where they started off being like, oh, we're lonely, we're isolated, how do we find friends? And they found each other. And then they were bored and they realized, oh, they need to share skills. And that created some more like social fabric. We're sharing our gifts, we're realizing our gifts together. And then they realized, yeah, okay, but we also need to do our real-time jobs. We're getting broke by just sharing with our friends. Like, we're also in the money economy. How do we build tribe wealth and do the economics? And yeah, who is this summer camp for? Are we designing it for people who are looking solely on that first level for belonging? Or is it people who are like, okay, I've got my friends, but I want to create a project together or collaborate, or I want to learn how to build the social fabric better between us? Or is it people who are like, okay, I've got the community, like maybe someone like thinking, Blivande, like it's like we've got it. Or but how do we turn this into a more like, how do we create tribe wealth? How do we create more impact in the world, or up level this to make it really possible that we can all live here or make it work for us all? Can we accommodate everybody in this camp, or Are we targeting it more for specific people?
I'm tempted to say all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we can all teach each other. The impressive community host can learn something from somebody who is just at the start, and somebody who is at their start can learn from the impressive community hosts. And there's like one thing I also liked about Microsolidarity gatherings is that you can kind of find your level of challenge within a spectrum of challenges. Some challenges are way above your league and not for you right now, but some challenges are like just the right amount out of your comfort zone. And I think that's been a great feature of the design so far.
Yeah, like one person might say, oh, I'm nervous but willing to host a singing workshop for 10 people. And then but they wouldn't be willing to host a conflict resolution for 50 people or something where the stakes get really high. Like these are some of the like graduated levels. I would agree with what you just said, Ondrej, about all of the above, like summer camp is for all of these categories, the ones that are looking to find friends, share skills, and then build tribe wealth or build social impact or like go out in the world and do impactful stuff. However, on that first category of like people who are looking to find friends, find belonging, I don't think we're open to everyone who's just looking for friends. I think it's like people that chime or feel aligned with this bigger picture that we're talking about. This pluralistic, coherent, collaborative, more communal way of participating in the world. This project of kind of like undermining individualism and becoming more balanced. Like people who are up for that long-term mission, so long as they're heading in that general sort of direction, then I think they're welcome and it's for them, and it's fine if you're a beginner. But it's not for every kind of person that's just looking for friends. I think there's some kind of boundedness in there. You know, it's like, do you want to actually join a movement of people who are taking responsibility for weaving social fabric and regenerating our social landscape? Because if you're up for that, then you're in, then you're welcome, and you're going to find, like you said, you'll find people at your level, and you'll have lots to teach and lots to learn.
Yeah, I kind of took that for granted, but it bears pointing out.
Yeah.
It's fun to think about, like, what are the other boundary conditions, or like how would we who should exclude themselves? I think something that I've found here is like we need to work with people who they have a degree of curiosity about themselves and about their impact on other people. That's sort of like, I talk about intelligent and open-hearted people. I mean, that's one of the criteria, is that you're able to reflect on, like, what am I feeling? What do those feelings suggest about? What do I need? Like, can I take responsibility for those needs? Can I make requests? Can I say, hey, I'm really stressed about the way this conversation is running at this pace. It's making it really hard for me to participate. Are you all up for changing gears or slowing down, or like could be maybe split into 3 little groups? And whatever the example of, like, we're looking for people who are have that kind of self-responsibility and that inner curiosity. They want to understand themselves and they want to learn how to become a skillful member of a superorganism. There must be other stuff though that we're also filtering on.
Relational beings who understand that they are relational beings.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean?
Understanding that you are part of a web of relationships anywhere you rock up, and that you are being impacted by everything else and you are impacting everything else, and being able to pay attention to it to a certain healthy extent.
So like when
assembling concepts.
These such, in a way, I can imagine like someone listening and be like, these are complex skills. Do you expect everyone to be like pro this? I'm also just on the path to this. Am I good enough? But I think it's not about being perfect in it, but being at least aware and being like, if someone says, hey, have you checked what you need in this? You're like, yeah, like the openness to that. And you're not expected to, like, I don't think anyone at camp is expected to be able to be fully self-responsible all the time. But that's why we have crews and pods, whatever you want to call them, at camp, to ideally like offer each other that like a generative mirror, like a loving reflection. And it doesn't have to be like pointing something out, like you're not taking self-responsibility, but it can be more like just asking someone, hey, what do you need in this? Like, what's going on in your inner world when that's been going on? You know, what does it remind you of something in your past? Did something happen to you before about that? Like a gentle, like loving provocation to do the U-turn. Yeah. But I think the willingness to recognize, as you said, Ondrej, like there's always a relationship. There's always, in any experience, there's two sides or two resonators in a tension. It's never just one way. There's like how you're impacted and what you do with that. So I think that's an important one.
Yeah, you said willingness. I think that's the key word. It's not that you have to be extremely skilled or competent, but that you're like willing to learn. You're like paying attention in a certain way and open to feedback from other people. I think we should at some point enter the agenda point of how do we design summer camp so that these experiences are likely to happen, so that people learn a lot about themselves and others and learn how to be more skillful hosts. How are people actually going to learn to grow their hosting capacity? Because this is our job. We're supposed to figure that out.
Well, I find one tangible approach that just came up now was like pods. I feel like in the past we've put people in pods, but it hasn't always been so explicit. And I feel we could do more this year to try and bring about that, like make it feel safe and fun and like courageous to give each other those loving provocations and really see each other. And I'm wondering how would you, like, and there's always a question that people ask when they get a bit more into Microsolidarity, how do you put people into crews or pods? What makes for a powerful one? Is like, yeah, should you prompt them or let them do what they want? I think last year it was quite open and free, and some pods worked really well, and others were sort of like nice, but nothing really happened, and others were actually quite full of tension. So that's one question. Maybe we don't want to go straight into that now, but like that's one area I'd really like to look at. Like, how do we design the pods to make the experiences we're talking about more likely to happen?
I remember from the last camp, that was one weak point in the design that I wasn't really satisfied with. Like, what I wished had happened was that we were really explicit with people about how did we decide to make these pod assignments? And the decision was basically we take people who have a lot of experience and a lot of familiarity in the network and we distribute them around. And then we take the newer people and we match those together so that there's a place for beginner questions and to make sure that the new people get to make contact with people that have got a lot of existing relationships in the network. So it's a lot easier to kind of puncture the clique of the cool kids and like make it more porous and open. And I wish they would be more explicit about the prompts. I don't think it's usually very helpful for a new group of people to enter a space of not knowing. Like if there's 4 people that are going to meet for an hour every day for a week. In my experience, if those people don't already know each other, it tends to go better if you can give them at least here's a starting point, here's a suggestion, here's a kind of conversation that we think will be relevant to all of you, and like a handful of questions and even some suggestions about how you might communicate, not just what you're talking about, but how you might talk to each other, how you might listen, what kind of ways you could show up for each other. So I would like to be more, explicit with that design.
Yeah, that was my thinking exactly as well. There was I remember in our pod there was a lot of like messing about and overthinking. I was just like, guys, let's just do a thing, you know. Doesn't need to be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you don't know what to do, here's a suggestion. Like you can just follow the script, and if you've got a better idea, do your better idea, and that's completely fine. Like none of this is obligatory, but like that there is a clear path laid out for you if you want to take it.
Yeah.
The other thought that I've had for this camp that we've never done is for everyone to sort of complete some kind of self-assessment at the start and use that self-assessment to design their own experience for the week. So like the assessment could be, here's 10 different skills that people can develop to be more skillful in groups. Which ones do you feel strong in, which ones do you want to learn about? And okay, so you said you want to learn more about mediating conflict. Let's design together some opportunities where you can get in and do that. Or you want to learn how to bring your practice of breath work or your practice of music or like that. You've got this thing that you're really deep in, but you don't really know how to share that with other people. Identify like what is a learning objective that you're excited about, and trust that we've got enough skilled people in the network at this gathering that we can kind of match people up and say like, oh yeah, you've run these kind of workshops before. Why don't you be my apprentice, or why don't I be your mentor and give you that push that you need in that supportive context. So like get out of your comfort zone, do the thing that's a little bit nerve-wracking, but you have sufficient support. So yeah, that to me starts with like an assessment process, and then has to translate into, so what? Like, what are you going to do about it?
Exciting.
Nerds.
Yeah, I just imagine this like I think I'm imagining we're going to be creating a bit more of like intentional workshops where everyone is kind of expected or assumed to be joining in the mornings, which is a bit different than previous camps, unless you were at Belgium, where we did like trainings from Carl and you and Nati and Lana. I was assisting, like full day on the first day, half day on the second day, just one session in the morning on the third day, and the other bits were taken up by open space. It was increasingly more open space. It feels like we might be going back a little bit to that by creating some intentional workshops for something like this in the mornings each day, and then there will be a bit of like open space at some point, and then even opener space towards the end of the day. But I like the idea of something like this at the beginning, and even integrating it with the pods. Like in your pod, you think of, yeah, what is your developmental edge, your learning objective, bringing in the peer mentor apprentice thing, maybe in a like have a bit of a marketplace where people are like, this is my idea. Would anybody like to do it together with me as a peer, or has anyone got expertise to share with me on this topic? And then you have sort of like a dialogue walks in the forest with your apprentice, peer, or mentor, and you just chat about it and see what comes of it. I know we're getting very specific here, but just throwing in my ideas as we are. Actually, that is what we're using this call for as well, right? Yeah. Okay.
That would just leads me to a question which I've had. What are the core workshops going to be about? What are the key things which you want to cover? Have you thought about that? Difficult question.
I mean, I would assume that the first big session is really, it's like arrival, orientation.
Yeah.
Who's here? How do we do things? Like the basic stuff that you have at any gathering. And a little bit of prompting to like start thinking about the content. But I think the first day is going to be pretty low intensity. People are traveling, they just need to arrive and get oriented in the space. And then maybe so that's maybe the first night.
Yeah.
And then the first morning after that, when people get up and they're fresh and ready to roll, then yeah, something around this assessment, like where are you at? Where do you want to get to? Maybe we get people to connect with their vision. Like, what's the good life? What's the good life according to you? Like, what's the social dimension? Like, what's the some people want to live in a city and know that they've got 30 friends within walking distance. Other people want to be nomadic and they just want to make sure that they've got good friendships online. A lot of people want to get married and have kids, and then like, where do I find a good partner? Like, I think opening up that field of like what's your good life and what's the social dimension of that, and what's your objective, and what support do you need to like be able to take more responsibility for that and make progress. That seems like the first full session in the morning, I think. And then what? Do you know what comes next, Jocelyn?
There's a whole middle arc, which I'm also not quite sure of. I kind of know where I want to land it, which is like, especially after going to the art of hosting training a couple months ago in Sweden. I was like, oh my gosh, this harvesting aspect is something I want to capitalize on really much better than I have before. And before, I think we've done like, okay, who wants to form a crew? But really like to do a proper harvest, to be like participant researchers together. What have we learned? Could be something like a World Cafe-ish kind of vibe, you know. But before knowing exactly, I think it would be interesting to come up with like, what's the calling question, the powerful question that we're all gathered here for, that unifies us, or that informs the arc. I think we kind of subliminally know it. Like, how do we create experiences for like developmental hospitality? I don't know, it's a bit jargony, but that's definitely not it. But something like, what's a snappy but really coherent question that we can refer to at the end and be like, well, what are some of the answers? And how do we continue supporting each other from here on, of course, as we always do. But the bit in the middle, I think, would be informed a bit more by that question for me. And I'm also willing to do a bit of just-in-time design like we have done in the past. I trust in us a bit of just being like, okay, what wants to happen? But it would be good to have a plan B. And plan A is follow the thread, sense and respond. Good opening, good closing would be important for me, but a middle can be ideas for now.
I wondered if the calling question is something like I was starting out with, like, how do we build islands of coherence?
Yeah.
Or like finding is the other option. You can also find an island of coherence. You don't always have to be a builder. But the question is about coherent groups. I wonder if focusing on coherence is an interesting theme.
I wonder if we want to weave a bit, because we've talked about hosting, if there's an aspect of hosting in the question as well, like, how do we find, build, or host, or how do we host islands of coherence rather than building?
Yeah, that's good. But again, it's still pretty jargony.
Yeah. Ondrej, do you have some thoughts? You've written in the chat, how do I create fertile soil for flowers like myself to thrive in?
Yes.
Well, the hippie
Socially
side
speaking. Yeah, really like thinking in terms of design and also hosting through the lens of like permaculture metaphors and nature metaphors. It really comes down not just the people, but also the space and everything else. Like, there's so many factors which you need to consider and work with. You know, like the metaphor of a fertile soil where you can grow. I mean, Rich, I think you said something about you know, being in too small a pot, and I've used this metaphor many times, like or something like trying to grow in a crack in a concrete. Like, yeah, dandelions can do that, but most flowers can't. So how do you find the flowers which can grow together and enrich each other and put them in the fertile soil? And how do you design that fertile soil for the flowers to thrive as a healthy biotope and healthy ecosystem, or part of a healthy ecosystem? To me, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm turning over like various phrases in my head and just like, it's not quite that, it's not quite that, it's not quite that. Yeah, there was one phrase that I've used in the past, which is like, how to become the kind of person that makes any group better.
I'm just taking notes of all our ideas. So I'm getting them done. What is it? How to become the kind of person that makes any group better?
Yeah.
I like the accessibility of that, like everyone can understand it. Yeah.
This is part of the design challenge, right? It's like you want a question that gives focus and it's inspiring and it's clear and it doesn't need to be explained. And often I found with gatherings when the designers will come up with a question that means a lot to them because they spend hours talking about it. But it doesn't really translate into a snappy phrase that people can just get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it requires a whole hour workshop introduction to to the framing of it. Yeah. How could anyone get this question? Yeah, I like it. How to become the kind of person who makes any group better. But I still want to get more of the hosting, build skills, or how do we learn together, or how do we actually there's something about, we were talking the other day that these summer camps tend to be a bit meta compared to other gatherings where like it's a gathering where we're making friends or we're gonna make art or we're here we're doing ship it week. The next week is much more specific, like we're here to come together, co-live and push get our projects over the line together with mutual support. This is more like, wait, we're coming together to support each other, to know how to host these kind of spaces or become the kind of person that makes any group better. And I wonder if there's something that kind of actually makes that kind of more explicit. Like, how do we, like, when we're together, we've got, like Adrienne Marie Brown says, whenever you've got a group together, there's a conversation that group can have, find it. Like, what's the question, like in another way, there's a question that every group wants to solve. What's the question that this specific group of people coming, we've already got people coming who are like running communities or excited about doing it better. We've got people, so they've got experience already. They're not necessarily coming to like find the people, but there might be people coming to find their people. What can this group mean for itself and each other that it reflects in the question? Do you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, the part of the complicatedness of this job is because it's a gathering about gatherings.
Yeah, exactly. Where we're learning by gathering together and how we are gathering together. But there's also something about we want to be able to take something away, either connections or inspiration, ideas, personal like courage, growth of courage or hope. Yeah.
There's also something about responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we've talked in previous conversations about the idea of a boot camp. Like this is more of a boot camp than a summer camp. Like there's a bit of a kind of growing up. There's a bit of a like push out of your comfort zone. There's a bit of like, whew, I'm sweating and I'm working hard and then I get to celebrate afterwards. And I kind of want to get that word responsibility. Maybe I'm thinking as well that conversation I had with Andrew that really resonated with a lot of people. This like not just receiving the world as it is, but grabbing the agency and saying, I'm going to do something about it. Like I'm going to be the one that inflates that bubble. You know, I'm going to be the one that creates a landing place for others. How do I become the kind of person who can bring out the best out of any group?
I like that too.
That's really cool.
That's good.
Bringing out the best in a group.
Yeah. I was writing something similar, but that's more snappy. I wrote, how can we develop our responsibility for making any group better? But I like that. How do I become the kind of person? Because that means like there's that allows space for like there's things I can do on my own, like work on my own self-reflection. How can I become the kind of person I could find others? How can I become the kind of person I could create something that helps me grow in a good direction? Pretty good. I like that best so far.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It still feels like there's one too many clauses in the phrase. How do I become the kind of person who can bring out the best out of any group? I want to get it one, but that's definitely the best one so far that I've like. It feels really close to the
Mm-hmm.
mark. Also, what naturally came to me was like putting it in the plural. Like, how do we become the kind of people who can host awesome groups? Becoming the kind of people who host awesome groups.
How do we? Do you say how do we become
Yeah,
kind of people who can host awesome groups, or who can make any group better?
maybe it needs to go under the pillow and slip on it for the next couple of nights.
Yeah, and if we do publish this recording, maybe if people have an idea, they can also post it in the little comments. But I think sleeping on it is good. But I love that. I think you're really close, Ondrej. Yeah. I laughed just now because Ondrej put, how do I person best group? Make it less close.
You wanted something snappier.
How do I person best group? Best group person?
How?
One more. I know. One more phrase that I always turn around is development happens spontaneously in the right social context,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of these like compressed insights, which is to say, when you've got the right people around you and you're doing the right kind of activity, you just naturally grow. You heal, you recover, you renew, you get inspiration, you become the better version of yourself. And what I want for this gathering is that people notice social context, they notice the furniture, they notice the architecture that affects the way that they show up, the way that they feel inside, the level of courage and hope that they have. Yeah, first that they can see it, and then second that they can take it into their hands and make it malleable. Like, this dinner conversation is very unsatisfying. How about instead of having 12 people at a long table, we just split these two tables into two of six? Like, that kind of little micro moments of agency that really shift the social context and lead to different results. Okay, that's the kind of thing that I want people to come away with, is this sense of like, oh, there's a million factors that shape the social context, and it's not overwhelming. It's just like full of opportunity. Like, I can shift the way that I'm asking questions, or the appreciation that I'm giving, or my relationship to silence, or even just like how I regulate my nervous system before I get in front of the room.
Mm-hmm. I like.
Vibe mechanics.
Basically. I think the card deck is actually going to be quite good at helping people see those things. And I know not everyone's going to come with a card deck, but I definitely know we're going to have enough there for everyone. And I really hope that people will use them, because I do think that that they just make, there's some good clear prompts there. These like little memes that we're talking about are written in there. I know there's a card that says development happens spontaneously in the right social context, just like as little reminders. I wonder even about printing some of them out A4 and just posting them on the walls, you know, like, or in the bathrooms, like, remember this?
Yeah.
So that we can, I think that there's a lot of value in that deck, or at least I want to explore how much value is in that deck after having made it. And I would be keen to incorporate that somehow in the design of this camp as well. Also, because it might be a really good tool for people to actually, you know, come away with a deck and use it to become the kind of person who can make any group better with the help of the card deck. I don't know. That would be great. Not necessarily hooked on that having to be the case, but I think it could be quite meaningful to incorporate into the design somehow.
Agreed. I'm feeling the tail end of my caffeine just hit that point where my brain suddenly stops being very coherent.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to check if you all, yeah, the coherence is disintegrating. I would check, are you both okay with us publishing this conversation in the hopes that it might enlighten others about what they might expect here?
Yeah. Very happy for that. Yeah.
And then anyone that's interested in joining us at summer camp, come. It's going to be great. It's August the 20th to August the 25th in Barcelona. I'll put a link somewhere so that you can find how to buy tickets. And there's even opportunities to come a bit early and stay on later, and other events happening afterwards. Like there's going to be, you could make a great trip. You could be here for weeks. There's going to be very cool activities happening here at our place in Barcelona at eltilo.casa. You can find out more. Are there any other points we should notify our imagined audience of before we wrap?
Maybe Jocelyn wants to hype up the Ship Week some more.
Yeah, Rich touched on it lightly, but that is one of the things happening almost directly afterwards, from the 29th of August to the 7th of September. It's basically a kind of 10 days of co-living and helping each other push our projects over the line. If you've got an idea, something you want to build, create, you've been sitting on for ages and you know it would make a difference to your life, but you just haven't got around to it, we're going to have like 10 days of helping each other out. Maybe some Pomodoro timers, some walks in the woods, some ideation moments, some fuck up nights. What's the biggest fuck up you had? I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I held the incubator at the beginning of the year, and this feels a bit like the Yancubator. So, like, get something done, ship it. I think it's going to be really fun, and Nikki and I are hosting that, and also Casa Tilo will be hosting the space. Yeah, and you could just stay on until then, and it'll be really great off ramp, because if you come up with a project or you have a project that stirs up in that time, it's going to be a great incubator for making, like, actually putting that into your life. So yeah. That's also on the Casa Tilo website that Rich just mentioned, right? Yeah. Can't think of anything else to add. I think that's great. Yeah.
Thanks for coming to our collaborative TED Talk.
Cool.
See you at summer camp.
Yeah. Bye for now.